Okay, so...
Someone was following Stanley. He was sure of it. If he checked over his shoulder now, he would surely catch them. It was only a matter of time.
Thunderman just comes after me.
Embrace of an old friend.
Ooh. Oh. Oh, okay. Trust the completionist instinct. There will be a reward for finding them all. Small floating objects have appeared across the office. How can you tell you spotted one? What makes them float in the air? Who took these pictures of them? Okay, so one's in the bathroom. One looks like they're in like red room. Thank you, good luck. Maybe we are the collectibles. That would be an interest. The one's in the bathroom. Ideas. Employee 421 building a bridge. Okay, maybe. Should we make them employees? I think I know where I can find a few of them. Ooh, that one's lit up. Oh, I see. You can find all 6 with a check mark. That's cool. Stairs. Something to do with stairs. Somewhere both red and blue. Nearby a fireplace. Oh. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't be taking the bucket next time.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Okay, I'm going back to the name of these little Stanley figurines, and now I'm torn between Stanlerines and Figlies. What do you think, Stanley?
Let's go
What name
Figlies.
better encapsulates the intrinsic sense of happiness that you get from seeing a small number in the corner of your screen go up by 1? Let me sit on it. I'm sure it will come to me.
Let's not call it a figlet.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms.
Okay, there you go.
Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong.
My wife has my bucket.
Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket.
My bucket.
And indeed,
My bucket!
now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him. Stanley! Stanley, it's me, the bucket.
I'm coming, my dear.
Could it truly be?
I love you.
He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next.
Bucket.
None of them were his. None of them were his special bucket.
Everything's bucket. Everything's bucket. Everything's
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket.
I think that was wrong. I found the glitch.
And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk.
That was hot.
Right away, she knew what the problem was.
Just like Mariella here.
This man had no bucket. Of course he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself.
Trust the bucket.
My life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Sorry, I got sauce on my keyboard. I was paying attention.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
There you go.
You're getting close now, Stanley. You've nearly gotten all of the Figler and Marines. Very soon, you'll collect the last one, and then the first number will equal the second number, and that will be it. We'll be different people by then. Different in the sense that we used to have none of them, and now we have them all. You can't go back to when you had no Figler and Marines. None of us can. The
Figler
elevator
and
raced
Marines
downward,
just sound like
plummeting towards an unknown fate.
a bad word.
It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
I hope so.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Yep, we're just gonna go escape for 5 minutes.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
I've had worse.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
You hear something, Bucket?
At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Yep. Quite interesting, eh?
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be.
Yeah.
To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death?
Yeah.
This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
Farewell, Stanley,
Ah,
cried
this
the
shit.
narrator, as Stanley and the
Not this shit
bucket were
again.
led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death.
Action! Okay. The
It was a
Stanley
shame,
Parable.
the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
Perfection, am I right, everyone? The bucket welcomes you to the grand exhibit. You are standing at the precipice of knowledge. Much like a bucket itself, the human mind is frequently empty within it. A cavernous void, but through use of exhibit in front of
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that
My
the
bucket.
bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
my bucket. Alright, so this is probably just a little, it's like a bucket with two handles. Bucket is depicted to have two handles, such as design has never been created in real life, having been deemed too dangerous and reckless experimental. Every year, dozens are put to death just for attempting it. Okay. A pile of buckets. 25 buckets. What? Total of 25 buckets. That is... Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 55,324, 325,325. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. The greatest number... Photo of 25 buckets. The greatest number of buckets ever captured on camera. The photographer experienced catatonic shocks for several weeks as a result of the euphoria from exposure to this many buckets at once. Hey. Inferno bucket. Replica of the Inferno bucket, which is the medieval era, was so powerful, alluring that it drove dozens of nations to war with one another for control of it. Billions died, and yet, in spite of it all, the simple fact remains: no one can control a bucket. Is this the bucket that caused a war between the two nations? Cave drawing. While we know that buckets predated the existence of mankind, we do not know by how long. This cave drawing depicts early man's discovering of the practical uses of the bucket, by which time the bucket had already likely been around for several millennia. Notice in these drawings how the bucket is allowing itself to be used, having judged humanity to be worthy of its treasures. Hey, gonna have to give me a minute. I want to go back down here. I see. Distress bucket of enology. Worry, negative forecasting, negative thinking, lack of reassurance. Vulnerability, size and strength of the bucket. Coping strategy. Holes. Rest of the relaxation, doing something you enjoy, rest and relax. Adjust the level of water in the bucket. The bucket stress bucket. Presented without commentary. Okay. They got bored. Holy shit. Okay.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
I fully agree. The hanging bucket. This piece symbolizes a necessary relationship between bucket and humanity. However clear our grasp of the bucket may be, there is yet more that is always out of reach. This distance inevitably is for our own good. Oh. I want bucket.
There is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
I'm not against it. All hail to the bucket.
Convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. Let me prove that I'm on your side. And there it is, the last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley. This is a real accomplishment. This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here. And
Yes.
now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines.
Yep.
Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked...
Yeah, just restart. Oh, woof, woof. Woof.
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines.
Oof.
Those figlets. I
Oh,
haven't stopped thinking about them
piglets.
since you
That's
nabbed
better.
every last one. Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it fill you to the brim with inner richness? Yes, I know we're supposed to be telling a story, but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone?
Yeah, my
I would
bucket.
love nothing more than to revisit the figurines. Just one more time.
And Sandy found the collectibles. Yeah, fair enough. Man, this every time I see this, I want to play some Skyrim. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! What happened to this reward? Doesn't kid. Oh yeah, this wasn't here before, was it? No, it was here. I just.
Here's where it all began. The first collectible. Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain? We were so innocent. We'll never be like that again, Stanley. And here was a second Stanlerine. You found this one all on your own, just by poking around in the boss's bathroom. You did that, Stanley. I'll be honest. Back then, I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone 6. But you continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways. Okay, let's do a little quiz. Which of these rooms was the room you found your third mini stand? Do you
this way.
remember?
I remember. You remember? I remember.
Hey, that's exactly right. It was here in the warehouse. It was the third one. You picked it up, and then after that, you had 3 of them. I'm glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your 3rd time doing anything.
Oh,
Let's
pretty
see,
sure
what
I
came
forgot
next?
about that.
Oh yes, we found a Figley in this pink room. Oh well, I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
No. No, it did not.
This was the 5th mini-Stan, and this one was really something special.
Look at the
It
gun.
was behind the boss's office. I remember it so clearly. In fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
What age is this?
Copyright.
Takes you back, doesn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent on anything else.
Excuse me.
And then, Stanley, then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right here by the red and blue doors. This memory is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps because it was the one that happened more recently than all the others. Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know
Yes.
is that this is the moment where you picked up a Figley and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other. Except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
Yeah, blue door. I mean red. Sorry.
And then there was no more, because we've caught up to the present moment. Nothing left to do but move onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone. No, I'm not done. I'm not ready to move on. Stop the loading screen. Isn't there some way we can stay here, keep enjoying these figurines? Let's just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone again from the opposite direction. See how that feels. Okay, yes, the room with the red and blue doors. I remember this. I must say, of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep going, I want more. And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched?
Yes.
Yes, I love that video.
In the pink room. Makes no sense.
Still don't remember the pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room.
Yeah.
These really were a treat to hunt down. You know, if there had been any kind of reward for finding all of these, it really would have neutered the intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the temptation. Next one.
All right. Yeah, I forgot where we got one of them. Lol. I just said that out loud, jeez.
This was our second Figley. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember it too. The past is truly a wonderful thing. Why does anyone ever choose to leave it? Keep going. This is it. The very first one we found in the exhibit where I introduced you to the figlarines. Oh, I want more memories, Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
Collect them all, Pokemon. Gotta collect them all. Do I not have my bucket with me?
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then, but time does put a rosy filter on everything. In fact, I dare say I'm actually quite fond of it now. Oh, yes, the two doors. Who could have forgotten that? A classic memory, this one. And before everything else, there was your office. Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office? There's something I feel I can remember. I can remember. Yes, I'm remembering something now. I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy, and I came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions. He would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected figurines for no reason. Why did I invent Stanley? Was I lonely? Yes, perhaps that's it. Perhaps I needed to imagine I had companionship. And Stanley really did make for a wonderful companion, even if he was a fiction. But I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes, I can be on my own again. I can do it. I'll be stronger this time. I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more good memory? Let's go back just once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and then I'll retire him for good.
Really?
I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go. This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves. The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
I forget if I have to like wait 30 seconds or something. Because I want to see if I can get this Easter egg. If I'm correct, I have to wait. Yeah, there we go. I had to wait. There we go. It's a rave party!
But just as Stanley was about to proceed further into the mind control facility, he tripped and fell over the railing and into the dark void below. Thankfully, he fell directly onto the bucket, which safely cushioned his fall. Now, what to do next? Stanley wondered.
Right, that it was a part of
Stanley
this.
and the bucket could find no way out of this enormous pit, and so eventually they decided that the best thing to do would be to simply get comfortable down here. So they set up a little couch and relaxed. It really wasn't so bad down here, a bit cold perhaps. After some time had gone by, they installed a few shelves as well, and a sort of kitchenette that was useful for when the bucket was craving panini.
That looks like the ending.
But it wasn't
That
until
looks
the
like a good
rugs and the standing lamps came in that it really started to feel like a home.
Feels great.
In fact, after some time, Stanley realized that it had been ages since he had
That's a nice
even
red
thought
dot.
of the mind control facility at all. He'd never
Yeah,
gotten
clean
to
you
fully
bucket.
explore what was up there, never been able to unearth the many mysteries
Man,
of the
that's a
mind
dirty
control
ass thing.
facility. This lack of closure began to eat at him. Soon he was dwelling on his regrets, and the state of their home slowly decayed as Stanley became withdrawn and neglected the cleaning. It unsettled the bucket deeply. Stanley wasn't
Cardboard.
usually like this. The bucket tried to
And
reach out to him
cardboard.
again and again, but to no avail. All Stanley could think about, all he could talk about, was
cardboard.
going back, doing it
And
over
cardboard.
again, staying on
Oh.
the path. It was a
Cardboard.
mistake to leave the
And on
path. It
cardboard.
was a mistake. It was a mistake. I need to do what the narrator says. I need to see the
Cardboard.
true ending.
And on cardboard.
This made no sense at all to the bucket, which was simply trying to live its life down here as comfortably as possible. Yet Stanley was unconsolable. This isn't an ending. This is just a hole in the ground. The bucket sighed. True, it wasn't an ending. But it's where we happen to be. And maybe, possibly, if we accept the reality of things, maybe this will become an ending eventually. It's what the bucket was counting on. The two of them waited for a very long time. Being told to do things it didn't wish to do.
Yeah,
What
that's
kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system. Stanley and the bucket waited in blackness. Was it over? Yes, they had done it. Stanley and the bucket had defeated their greatest and darkest enemy, freed themselves from the tyrannical grip of the evil mind control machine. Freedom was now mere moments away. Excitedly, the two of them began to discuss the kind of life they wanted to live once they stepped through this massive
I want to
door.
become a carpenter.
The bucket wanted to learn to roller skate. Stanley wanted to sneeze in every country on Earth. Both of them wanted to begin watching a movie, any movie, but then stop it halfway through and begin watching it in reverse from the end. True, it was a simple life they envisioned, but it was one they'd lived together, with one another to lean on, to trust, to support.
Huh?
What? Wait. What was happening? Why had the door stopped? Was Stanley and the bucket not about to be freed? An unbearable silence filled the room, lingering in uncertainty, until finally the truth hit Stanley square in the face. This building did not want the bucket to leave. Even the facility itself recognized the incredible calming presence of the bucket, needed the soothing warmth of the bucket.
You can't have my bucket.
Part with the bucket. No. Stanley can't leave this place. Not while he has such a precious bucket in his arms. Not while this building has anything to say about it. Stanley realized he would never again leave this very room. But at least he has the bucket.
You can't have my bucket.
In darkness isn't really so bad, Stanley thought to himself. As long as I have my bucket with me, right? I'll be okay, won't I?
Yeah.
Stanley gulped. Very soon now, he was about to find out. Cold reality of his past began to sink in. Stanley decided that this machinery... But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself?
Damn you,
How could
bucket.
the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen.
Oh.
Birds.
Birds.
Silly birds. The control buttons became active again.
Hold on, can I go back? I can't, okay. Interesting. Good.
Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable. Of all the possible paths his life
Beautiful
could have
geese.
taken, this one was surely the best. And Stanley was happy.
Yeah. Happy. Well, I don't see any issues. There are other Easter eggs, but I'm not gonna look for them. I think. Bucket, come with me.
It's bucket time.
It is. And this is the MGG signing out of the Stanley Parable for the last time. I don't know what it is with me at the end of these videos, just stretching my arms out. But yeah.
Hope you enjoyed. This was pretty fun.
AMTG, you're a star no matter where we are. YouTube screens, Toronto skies, you always take me by surprise.